Shabbos Daf Hey. Yes, you heard right. We are holding today on Daf Yud Zayin, but I'd like to go back to Daf Hey. One of the biggest concepts that we have in Daf Yomi is that if you miss a daf, don't try to make it up. Jump ahead and do the daf that Klal Yisrael is doing. If you fall behind a few daf, and it might happen in our situation today with Corona, you might not be at your regular shiur. Don't give up. Just start where everybody else is. Write it down, and when you have the opportunity, come back and do the daf. So on Daf Hey, the Gemara is discussing the concept of yad. In the Mishnah, where there's a poor person in the Rishus Harabim who brings an item into Rishus HaYachid and places it in the hand of the Balabayas, the person standing in the Rishus HaYachid. He did an Akira and then an Hanacha. Why is he chayiv? The hand of the Balabayas is not 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim. And the Gemara makes many attempts until it finally comes to a conclusion. The Gemara's first attempt is, on Daf Hey, that is, we have a halacha, if you take a ball and you throw it to the catcher, and he catches it in his mitt, you are chayiv, because you did the akira by throwing it, and the hanacha, the catching of the catcher, that's your hanacha. You see from here that even though the mitt is less than 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim, you are chayiv. Says the Gemara, you're right. That's a great raya for hanacha. But where does it say that the akira, if you pick up an item from the balabai's hand and you bring it into Rishus Harabim, you're also chayiv? It doesn't say anywhere that the akira could be from a place that's less than 4 by 4. In addition, how do you know that the catcher's mitt is not 4 by 4? So Rabbi Abba has another attempt. Perhaps we're talking about baskets. When he put the item in the balabai's hand, it's referring to a basket, and you have to read it as basket, not hand. Well, that would be very difficult, because Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda says if a person has a basketball hoop in Rishus Harabim, and he has a basket on top, and you throw a ball into the basket, it's as if you threw it into Rishus HaYachid. So you see a basket, it's a Rishus by itself. So the Gemara has another attempt. Perhaps this hand that the Mishnah is referring to a hand that's really close to the ground. It's within 3 tefachim of the ground, and then you could invoke the concept of lavud. Your hand is like part of the ground, and the ground is obviously 4 tefachim. The issue with that is that it says in the Mishnah that he's standing up. How does his hand reach the floor? Well, perhaps he's leaning over. Perhaps he's in a pit and his hand is by the surface of the pit. Maybe we're talking about a dwarf. Says Rava, that doesn't make sense. The Mishnah is talking about all these interesting cases. Therefore, Rava comes up with the final pshat. A person's hand is considered halachically 4 by 4. So going back to that case that we said, a guy throws a ball into a catcher's mitt, he's chayiv. He did a akira and hanacha. If the catcher gets up and moves towards the pitcher, then the pitcher is potter, because it's shnayim shasu. All the pitcher did was the akira, but the hanacha is not where he wanted it to land. Somebody else got involved there and made a different hanacha, and therefore they both did this melacha and they're both potter with their eyes. Ask Rabbi Yochanan an unbelievable question. What happens, and I saw a video of this being done actually, if a person takes a ball and throws it, let's say tosses a football, and he runs really quickly and catches his own throw? In a way, he's acting like 2 different individuals, and perhaps he should be potter. Or maybe no, he is creating 2 different malachas, it's one person, and therefore he should be chayiv, and the Gemara actually remains in a teiku. If a person puts his hand into his friend's backyard and grabs water, and then he put it back, he's chayiv. And the chiddush is that water that's laying on top of water is still considered as if it's laying there, because all water is one. But if you have, let's say, a floating walnut, that's not part of the water, and that's not a hanacha, that's not its resting place, and therefore you're not chayiv. A person who received rain as it was raining in his hand, that's not considered as if he did an akira, because what's the difference if his friend put the item in his hand and we said that's not considered an akira, or it came from the sky? That's not considered an akira. What if he pushes the water with his hand? That's also not considered an akira, because it didn't come from a 4 by 4 place. Now if, let's say there's a roof on a slant, so it sort of slows down the descent, but that's not considered a stoppage. Whereas if it's an item like a Megillah, that it rolled down the roof but it came to a stop, that's considered as if it's not. But water that continues to move, that's not its resting place. The Gemara says, what about a walnut inside a small little boat, a kli, a vessel that's on the water? Do we view the walnut as if it's in its resting place in the vessel, or perhaps because the vessel is still on the water and it's moving, they are both not considered in their resting place, and the Gemara remains in the teku. If you have oil that floats on top of wine, and somebody who's tamei, a tvul yom, who went to the mikvah, but he's waiting for the evening, and we're discussing truma, touches the oil, is it as if he touched the bottom wine as well, because it's liquid that's above liquid? Or perhaps we view each liquid as an individual entity. The oil is by itself, and the wine is by itself. So according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, they're both connected, and if you touch one, you touch them both, and they both are tamei. And according to the Tanna Kama, no, they are not connected. If somebody has food on him, like on a knapsack, and he keeps on going back and forth, he's not chayiv until he makes a short stop. What kind of stop? It has to be a stop that he stopped for rest. But if it's stopped just to readjust the load, that's not considered a stop. If that's not considered a stop, then the reverse is true. We could use that same logic, but to his detriment. In other words, a person is chayiv if he walks in Rosh Hashanah 4 amas. What happens if he's walking 2 amas and he stops to readjust his load? Since it's not considered a real stop, so then when he continues and he gets to 4 amas, he'll be chayiv, because what happened was he walked 4 complete amas. The fact that he stopped in the middle, that's not considered a stop. But if he stopped to rest, then he's not chayiv for walking daled amas in Rosh Hashanah, because he didn't do it in one shot. The stop was a real stop. And the same thing Rabbi says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that if a person lifts up a chayfetz, he lifts up an item, and his intent was to put it somewhere in his house, and then he walked outside, then he never did an akira, because in order to be over an akira, an oitzah, you have to have intent to lift it up in order to take outside. But over here his intent was to lift it up and put it on the shelf. Therefore he's not chayiv. Have a wonderful, safe day.